everyone. I am excited to be with you tonight. Going to start the presentation right on time tonight, but a recording of it is going to be available, as well as that link at the end. So if you missed something or you're late joining, or anything of that nature, you can always go back and look at it from the recording link as well. Tonight, I'm going to be talking on a topic that is very important and very critical for where we are in our industry today. And recent polls have shown that more than 60% of practices will face embezzlement in their lifetime. I believe over the next few years, we'll see that climb pretty significantly just because of the way our economy is shifting and just the opportunities that exist with mishandling of money and funds. So, while I can't see you and you can't speak into this presentation, you can use that side chat and actually submit questions to me along the way. At the end of this presentation tonight, I'm going to give you a brief overview of a company called Curve Dental. They are a practice management system that replaces your existing server-based and moves you to the cloud. They have been an incredible partner of mine over the years, and while I don't work with them, I do work very closely with them because they've become such an important asset for me in creating a safer way of practice management, a better way of doing things. And so as you hear me talk tonight, a lot of these safeguards have been embedded into the way that Curve Dental works. I'm excited to share those with you and to, make things, make things kind of this front and center focus for you. I'm working with clinics day in and day out, constantly working in practices, traveling all over the US to make sure that practices truly understand what it means to operate with excellence. And this topic is, like I said, near and dear to my heart as a result of that. I've served as a fractional operator with my company for the last 4 years based out of Dallas. And then beyond that, another 15 years of direct practice operational efficiency, as well as marketing integrations as well. So just an incredible opportunity over the years to be able to learn from some of the best, and also unfortunately to see some things that we'll talk about tonight that have caused me to stop in my tracks as I'm evaluating EBITDA and potential growth of a clinic and where things might stop. So the learning objectives for tonight, we cover these because it is CE, are to identify common schemes. What do we see happening today? Where could embezzlement actually occur? And then going back and implementing controls, making sure that you, again, I'm sure you've heard this a million times, it's the controllables. And for me, the primary aspect of a practice running efficiently is the cash flow controllables. How's the money coming in? How's the money going out? Leveraging technology, ensuring that the right things are being utilized to build your practice for excellence, and then also developing policies. What I absolutely love about this course that I teach is it's stepping away and saying every new hire is going to know that we keep an eye on our money. Every team member is going to know that we set these standards to protect them and to protect the practice. And it's just a win-win for everybody involved. So let's jump right into it. So the hidden threat that I see right now is that practices today, over 60% of them will experience embezzlement at some point in their lifetime. In a single instance or case of embezzlement, usually what is found averages around 109,000. And that amount is growing rapidly because of the way that the practices are trying to do more to offer cash discounts, to take checks from patients, to avoid some of those increased fees associated with running a credit card or other things. And usually what we see is it goes about 24 months, so about 2 years or more of an undetected situation. And so the goal tonight is that if you do have it in your clinic, you'll find it faster. If it's a team member that's been associated with you for a long time, that you will operate in a trust but verify mode and take into account that there are a lot of ways that an embezzlement can occur. I talked to a doctor not long ago who said to me, well, Cassie, I don't think I have any problems because I don't really have a lot of cash in my clinic. And I said, well, there are a lot more ways to embezzle than cash. So tonight we're going to talk about those and really where we want to just shore up the excellence within our clinic. So why are dental practices vulnerable? The first one is multiple payment sources. Make a note tonight for yourself that if you're taking more than one type of a credit card or merchant terminal processing into your clinic, like one that's for, your recurring payments and one is for the payments in the office, now is the time to pause and look at all of those, because it is very likely that you have multiple logins and multiple ways for money to come in. In my opinion, it should be one merchant service, so one method of payments being received, and also simultaneously that cash should be very specifically collected. Also, limited oversight. The doctors have removed themselves and placed trust in the team to do the deposits, to take in the money, to count the cash. And it's just missing some elements where the team has understood that the doctor doesn't really look at those things, again, which creates the opportunity. And concentrated controls. Oftentimes one employee will create some controls that allow them to be the only one that functions the way that they should. I heard a doctor not long ago say, if my office manager was hit by a bus, she's the only one that holds every password and every login, and I would be out of luck. And what I would say to you is, now is the time to reevaluate that. Now is the time to spread out segregation of duties and really just change the way things are operating. So we're going to launch a poll here as we talk about the case study of a trusted manager. And what I would ask of you is to just kind of take that poll and take into consideration what's happening in your own clinic, and is there anything that needs to be kind of thought of in terms of, is there potential embezzlement that could even occur in my clinic? So the case study to focus on first is a real case study of a practice that I worked with, but the office manager was hired with over 15 years of experience, high level of, references, the everything checked out, right? From the get-go, she seemed like a really good hire. And this was again about 24 months. I would say it was a little more than that in before we started to find out what was going on. But one of the things that I noticed right away when coming in as a fractional operator was she insisted on handling all the financial duties. The team even mentioned that she was holding on to absolutely everything and had never taken vacation. Ironically enough, she was getting ready to take a vacation because someone had been hired as an assistant manager that she trusted. But during, it was not a vacation, it was a sick leave. During that time, it was a very kind of like haphazard moment. Over $247,000 was stolen in over 3 years. So it was just almost at that mark, a little bit under it. I've tried to kind of generalize this case study so that I don't give you the exact specifics of the person and protect the practice. But what I can tell you is that money was being taken because the office manager was actually creating receipts inside of Word, and printing those receipts out inside of Word. And the way that it was found was someone came in for a receipt mentioning the cash that they had used to pay, and we did not have any way to find that cash transaction. They actually had called me and said, we can't find this cash transaction in the patient management system. And lo and behold, when I had them search for receipts on her desktop, we saw receipts pop up for cash transactions that were never logged into the patient management system. So write-offs were happening of treatment and cash was being accepted behind the scenes. The aftermath was the practice nearly closed, and that was really because the staff trust shattered. The team as a whole became very angry about what was going on. Lots of noise spreading with her departure, because one of the things I want you to keep in mind is that trusted manager usually has a lot of people connected to them that are become close friends. They've given them things over periods of time, and that really kind of helps keep everybody on the side of the person that's the embezzler. So the legal proceedings lasted 2 years, and it was a messy situation. Many doctors I work with do not press charges or pursue anything legally, and I would say that it's equally as damaging because of the fact that the team is involved and the team starts to understand what took place. So some of the common schemes that you're going to hear about tonight, just like that office manager that had to use vacation because she was sick, she had an emergency and had to leave the clinic. The same is happening with many other instances where the office manager is holding tight. It's not always the office manager. It could be who's handling your insurance, or someone that's working with treatment plans. You never really know. But some of those common schemes are skimming cash. They're taking cash before they're recording it in the system, like the office manager I mentioned. Fictitious returns or refunds. That means that they are actually refunding back to another method of payment. So I have a policy with every clinic that I work with that refunds are always only a check, and they're processed once a month unless that person, that patient just has an urgent need and needs that money. And those checks are signed off on by whoever the doctor is or the controller of the clinic, so that none of the refunds are processed back to a credit card, which I've actually seen different cards utilized for putting refunds back on cards, and then it becomes very difficult to track. Insurance fraud, double billing insurance or changing the way that an insurance payment posts. I've had individuals that actually have set up their own bank accounts where they've signed the checks over to their personal bank account versus the office. And then the last one, this is more and more happening. Someone who's in charge of the payroll manipulation has kind of a friendship with someone else who's paid hourly, and they're going in and they're adding in hours to the schedule, and that person's getting paid for time that they didn't work. So I have a policy that it's a 3 strikes, you're out with clock in and clock out errors. And I've set that up with a bonus structure. So the 3 strikes, you're out means you don't receive the bonus if you're missing clock in and clock out. So you'll hear a little bit of those techniques and protocols that I've implemented, and how I see those really benefiting the practice. So there's this embezzlement triangle that exists right now. And one of the things that I hear is that a team member will simply say, I deserve this, or I'm just borrowing temporarily. Also, there's pressure or motivation, financial problems, addiction, or lifestyle expectations. One that I found, an office manager was gambling quite a bit. And right front and center, she mentioned that she liked to go gamble. So there could be motivation tied to that. Just be alert, be aware. It doesn't mean that anyone is, guilty, but it means that, again, that we trust but verify, and that we use this triangle to serve as kind of a guide for us in the busyness of the day to go, you know what? That's a little different. I'm not sure if that's right. So then the opportunity is that there are these weak controls and concentrated responsibilities. What happens in most embezzlement situations is they do it once, realize there is no one watching, and the once turns into more. So what we want to do tonight is we want to take this opportunity to say, what are the safeguards we can put in place so there's never again a one-time done that opens the door for other things to exist? So the profile of a typical embezzler, unfortunately, it looks like someone who is a trusted employee. They're often the most dedicated team member. They work the latest. They come in on the weekends if you need them to, and they're fiercely protective of their duties. Most people in the practice would not know their roles and responsibilities, which is why I believe segregation of duties and cross-training is so significant. I always say that when you're training an office manager or you're training a team member, just make it a point to say to them, listen, we do this to protect you and to protect everyone else in the clinic. Whatever you know, someone else in the clinic needs to know. There are financial indicators. They have unexpected financial pressure. They're likely mentioning that to you. They're living beyond their apparent means. They're talking about their debt. They have a gambling or an addiction issue that you might actually see or have mentioned to you. And also behavioral warning signs. They refuse to take a vacation. They work unusual hours alone. They say, Doc, I need to come in because it's too loud during the day. I need to come in at night and process claims. Or they become possessive about their financial tasks. They don't want those handed off to anybody else. So here are some of your red flag checklists of the things that I hope that you will consider. Financial inconsistencies. This means that the production to collection ratio has a heavy discrepancy. If instead of a small shift from production to collection, there is a slope, go ahead and take a look. And I'm not going to give you a percentage because it varies based on who you're in network with. But if it is significant enough that it looks like you're working for free sometimes, that is something that you need to pause and look at, which means there are increased adjustments or refunds. And I want to pause here for a minute. And again, this is another gold nugget I hope you will take back with you. Many clinics today have one write-off type. That means they go into the system, and when insurance pays less than anticipated, we write off the remainder, right? And every single adjustment to the physical ledger or invoice shows a write-off. The difference is when you have write-offs by type, write-off, Blue Cross Blue Shield, write-off, Delta Dental, I now can see where I'm taking the greatest hit from insurance and change my write-offs to be reflective of the insurance carrier, or just straight write-offs for courtesy treatment or write-offs for cash discount, so that every write-off has a position in place. One thing you can do when you launch into this with your team is to say, listen, I want to do this for a couple of reasons. One, we have a greater capacity of being able to see what type of adjustments are happening and eliminate some of our own human errors. The other thing is, when you implement this, write-offs by type of insurance carrier can help you at the end of the year determine whether or not you want to stay in network. Who did you have the most write-offs with and why? That is a wonderful tool. The same is true with refunds. I see time in and time out where the refunds are processed in these giant bulks. And I'll go, well, why do you think you're giving out so many refunds? Well, I don't know. We're quoting it wrong all the time. And I'll say, well, do you know what you're giving out refunds for? And more specifically, do you know what insurance carrier is associated with the refund? So set up for yourself something simple in order to process these refunds. You can do a Google spreadsheet, something where you don't share, HIPAA information. You can use the patient ID instead of their name. But when the refund is requested to be processed once a month with a check, they have to put the insurance that the refund of for the patient is associated with. Why? Because very quickly in a month's time, you can see they were all associated with Blue Cross Blue Shield, and guess what? The fee schedule was wrong. So now we fix the fee schedule and the refunds go away. These are very important steps in those financial inconsistencies that should be a front and center first placement of what you do next. The other thing is behavioral changes. There's resistance to procedural changes, an unwillingness to share financial duties, which means you're going to need to drive deeper, that these get segregated, and a defensiveness when questions are asked about finances. You should have full control on your books. You should know every month where your adjustments are happening, and you should know the reason why. The control issues that are a part of that involve in insisting on taking things to the bank. And I'll pause here and say, most practices are set up to reconcile the bank statement against the deposit and never reconcile against the practice management system. If that part is not involved in your process today, you have a huge gaping hole of information that needs to be shared because that deposit could be altered. Also, password hoarding. They should not have administrative privileges to adjust everyone in the clinic's passwords. Those should stay with someone in the highest point of leadership, and taking homework unnecessarily. I know it's hard and it feels like after hours is the best time to do this, but I believe Curve does this beautifully. I can set up that at a certain time of day, an hour after the practice closes, no one can access the practice management system any longer. Does your system work that way? Or does everyone have a login and they can access it at any time they want? They can come into the practice anytime they want. These are the things I want you to really be thinking about with these red flags. So the initial assessment, so to speak, of what is happening in these situations is there's a direct financial loss. So knowing where that money is going. There's a legal expense if you decide to pursue it, an emotional toll on your team, and overall staff morale. And I share this slide to say, as I give you the rest of this, it's not just a CE. It's to say this is what you potentially stand to lose if you don't fix it. Not to mention the fact I hear doctors saying all the time, I'm working harder than I ever have, but I'm making the least amount of money. And the very first thing I do is to go in and look at where their cash is flowing, where are those adjustments occurring and the money going out, where are the credits being given, and how is everything locked and secured. First and foremost means a segregation of duties. The person that collects payments at the front desk needs to be someone that doesn't take the money to the bank. That person collecting the money, also, you have a camera in your office now. Curve has a beautiful way to integrate this. But when taking cash, I have two policies for collecting money. One is if they are taking cash, it's exact change only. Start your new year with absolutely no petty cash and put a sign up that says, patients, we only are accepting exact change for cash treatment at this time. Thank you so much for your understanding. If they pay you with a $100 bill and it was $95, the $5 balance goes to the account for the next date of service. Get rid of petty cash and get rid of making change. Psychology actually shows that the more someone handles money, the more inclined they are to consider taking some of that, because it's a psychological effect of the longer I touch it. Get rid of your petty cash. You don't need it. We live in an age where we don't need to give out petty cash even for the ordering of food or something for the team. Use a corporate credit card, tie it to DoorDash so you always have access to your receipts and you can track these things. The other thing with collecting money is you've got a camera on your computer. That's that little camera to take the patient's picture and put it to their profile. Have them take a picture of the money collected and save it to the doc center. They have to initial on the ledger or on the invoice that the money was collected and the amount, and the picture is saved to the doc center. That way, there's absolutely zero discrepancies on whether or not that money was given. Many times when an office manager leaves or someone leaves on the team, then someone begins to ask about cash payments, right? And I made a payment and it's not showing up. If it's documented and the picture of the money is stored to the document center of what they paid, there's never a discrepancy again. Reconciling and adjustments. Make sure, again, that the reconciling of your accounts is not just QuickBooks to the deposit. So many of you are set up this way, and it's a gaping hole because you need to be recording that information inside the patient management system. They should be running those reports and going, okay, it says you collected this. However, I'm only seeing this in the bank for the day. That's critically important because when the deposit is all that's reconciled, who's to say they didn't take out a check that day and just not record it? The office manager entering transactions into the accounting system, please make sure that your office manager, your clinical, team members, your someone who's doing treatment planning, no one has access to QuickBooks but the doctor and the accountant. Many times I see where even the QuickBook accounts are accessible for someone else on the team. Everything should be locked down, no access to that. Also, I would say on that recording side, Curve does a beautiful job of this, but your users can be identified by type and what they have the ability to do. Not everyone should be able to adjust money off of a patient account. Not everyone should be able to grant a refund at their leisure. Those should be reserved tasks that are completed in a very controlled environment. Also, depositing. I recommend that the dentist rotate deposits or do a virtual deposit in the office if you can. Then cash handling needs to be deposited at least every other day, if not every day, depending on how you receive it. I have some practices that let that cash sit in the office for up to a month, and that's one of the first things I eliminate. Don't let cash sit within the office. So your cash handling protocols to be thinking of, right? And really, again, I'm driving this home as much as I possibly can. Eliminate the petty cash. It's not necessary. There's easier ways to do this. And petty cash is nothing but a headache, and it's nothing but an open door for extra money to sit in drawers. Just go to exact change only. Those daily balances, are they reconciled against the payments on that daily production report before closing? There's a great report inside of Curve that's basically your daily deposit checklist. It shows you the types of intake of money you received. You go down the list, you make sure all are accounted for, and then the money goes to the bank. Dual verification. If you are filling out a deposit slip to take to the bank, It must be signed by two people at all times. And have your accountant actually check this as they're looking at those bank statements for you. They can just do a randomized series of dates, but make sure that dual verification is happening. It's a great way to ensure that more than one person is looking at that money and counting it and ensuring accuracy. Deposit documentation. Create those deposit slip copies and match them to the bank receipts within 24 hours so that everything is accurate. I have practices that they can dispose of them at the end of the month and the doctor just does a quick sign off. But as soon as the deposit is printed, it goes into a 3-ring binder along with a copy of the bank receipt and it's signed for. The doctor initials, just thumbs through, initials the 30 days and says we're good to go. Make sure, even if it's something that seems very like, back to the basics, make sure they know you're looking at it. This is the greatest way embezzlement begins, is the doctors stop looking at it and they're like, oh, take the deposit. No worries. I don't need to look at that. They do. You need to be so invested in this that they're even thinking about, if I do something in the system, it will be found. The owner review means that practice owner is reviewing the daily reports and deposits and confirmations weekly. This is a very big deal to me. I like for the office manager or at least someone once a week to send the adjustment summary per provider via email. That way, everybody in the clinic gets a chance to look at it. Now, two things happen when that occurs. One of my favorite things is it lets them know your eyes are on the money, right? So they're looking at those adjustments. In fact, when I first implemented this, one of my first clinics, they had over $18,000 in adjustments happening every single month. And it was 2 docs. And I'm like, that's a lot in adjustments. So I asked the office manager to send the adjustment summary to those 2 docs. Sure enough, by month 2, the amount of adjustments went down to almost 7,000 because the eyes were on it and there was accountability. The second thing that happens in that ownership review and the distributing of information, if you have an associate that you're bringing into your practice, there is nothing better than giving them a weekly accountability and understanding of the collections against the adjustments. The biggest reason why associates get into a tiff or leave that senior doctor is they feel like they're being cheated out of their money. Well, I saw my production and it was over here like all month long, and now I'm only getting this. If every week they're looking at those adjustments, it leaves absolutely no room for discrepancy and everyone's playing on the same team. So please consider those as you're looking at establishing protocols. So insurance and billing controls. For me, this is critical. Make sure first and foremost that if you don't have someone in a position that actually understands insurance, but yet they are processing your insurance billing and submission of claims, it's likely time to consider a third party or hiring someone else. And I cannot stress this enough. Please consider doing something where you create some paths forward with excellence in insurance. Many times I see where like a DA has been appointed to now take over, reconciliation, and they have no knowledge of posting. There are plenty of companies out there today that come alongside you and help with the processing of claims. EOB reconciliation, that means that there is a matching of all insurance payments and procedures and expected reimbursements. Whoever is doing this for you, whether it's internally or a third-party team, I highly recommend that they're giving you a weekly report that reconciles EOBs. Also, adjustment authorization, requiring that there is an authorization for anything over $50 if it's not associated with a write-off for insurance. This means that if I forgot PIN and PIN retention and core buildup for a crown, or those type of codes for a crown, that I am actually having to approve that someone on the team is going to write that off. It makes that mistake front and center so that it doesn't happen again. And then conducting regular audits. I really believe this is something that can come from your accountant. Ask them to review those aging reports and outstanding claims for you. Once a week is a great way of doing that so that it doesn't get ahead of itself, but make sure those audits are being conducted. Payroll and expense controls are a very big piece of this that, I really want to just challenge you with. Maybe you've never thought about embezzling associated with payroll. I see this all the time. Make sure you're using a biometric time clock system. Most of the ones that are out there today that provide payroll solution, most vendors have this accessible to you. And you also can set the radius within like a mile of the clinic. So instead of them clocking in, at home, which I actually saw where someone had been set up to clock in at home and then would drive into work. So they got paid literally an extra 45 minutes back and forth each day. That there was no parameters set around this. Owners have to approve overtime, and there has to be a reason why. So you can't just have overtime just sitting out there and the office manager willy-nilly approves it whenever they feel like it. You are involved in those numbers. And also compare scheduled hours to actually what's worked. If your office manager is responsible for your payroll, they need to print the schedule for you and they print the payroll report. They can highlight for you where there were overages, and then it gives you a chance to start seeing it. Make sure, again, even if it's 2 minutes of your time to review a report, make sure your team knows that you're looking. Expense approval. Implement approval thresholds. They can't buy things without your authority. Also, require all original receipts for things that are purchased and match those invoices to received goods. I actually had a clinic where the embezzlement was occurring because the person was buying extra supplies and then selling them themselves on an Amazon account. Make sure that you are safeguarding the money that is being spent on supplies and that those invoices someone receives in the goods, puts a check mark on the invoice, and again, it has to sit on your desk. I'm telling you, I'm not here to give you more work, but it takes 2 seconds to look at a check mark and see that it's good, see that someone reviewed it. The bigger thing is that they know you're looking. Also, vendor management, periodically verify vendor information. Make sure that someone hasn't set up another person into the system. This just happened, I think it was with Google, one of the larger companies in our country, where someone was set up as a vendor that was not a vendor, and for several years was paid hundreds of thousands of dollars through the company. This actually does happen where vendors are added in and checks are cut. I have offices all the time where a team member, like an office manager, is responsible for writing the checks. Don't do that. Make the writing of the checks sit with those in positions of senior leadership and authority. And also compare prices across suppliers. I love tools where you can actually have a procurement platform, Dental City, method. I think there are others as well, but something where there's a vetting of the prices that are available. A lot of what happens is that vendor gets a hold of the person that orders and incentivizes them directly with gift cards and trips and extra bonus, items or something of that nature. Don't allow that to happen. It's likely they are ordering more supplies than you need. In fact, in one instance of that, I remember saying, it looks as though they are preparing for a Noah level flood and the world completely crashing down because the ordering of what's happening for your clinic is about 4 to 5 times what it should be. So make sure you're managing that. Make sure if you haven't evaluated it, that you're evaluating it now. Use technology as your ally. Make sure you're setting up access controls. Again, Curve does this wonderful role-based permissions of who's in leadership and who's not. Audit trails, making a clear path forward of who tracks those audit trails and adjustments. One of the fastest ways to know if embezzlement is occurring, if you have a hunch of it, is to log into the audit trail. And if you see one user that is logged into a patient account in a multiple of 10 times or more within an hour or so, it's likely because they're double checking their work. It doesn't mean they're embezzling, but it does mean that it's a heightened sense of security issue to be looking at. Create alerts, set up notifications for unusual transactions or pattern deviations. Even in merchant services, you can set up alerts. So if a refund is attempted to be processed inside of that merchant terminal versus a check being cut, which again is the ideal method to do it, you get an alert every time that happens sent to your email. And then analytics dashboards. Curve has a wonderful key metric dashboard that's showing those key elements. And again, I would tell you, if you have a production to collections that is literally like a slope, just a straight slope, instead of a gradual step, it's immediately time to start evaluating your systems and make sure that all errors, including adjustment errors, are eliminated for you before it becomes greater problems. So build that trust through technology. Create those reports, daily financial summaries delivered to the practice owner's inbox. I like that every deposit goes into the binder and another copy of it is sent to the provider. And again, or to the doctor. It could be once a week if you want to do it that way. But all I'm saying is if you ask them to pull the reports and do this differently, make sure they know that you get the reports. Even if you're not looking at them every day, they should feel like you are. Staff accountability means that individual login and tracking and transactions should be something that they know is monitored. It's a great thing to just say, like, listen, we have parameters. Once the practice closes, we have an hour in the system and then everybody gets shut out. It's just something we do for the protection of the practice. And patient transparency. Digital receipts. There's something you'll hear about, Curve Pay, where they actually get a digital receipt at the point of transaction. And I love that. So at the point of sale, they get the receipt sent to them right away. So there's nothing being adjusted, nothing being sent separately, which is really a very powerful way of doing it. And then implementation strategy. Be willing to assess this as a team, open up conversation, add it into your book for the new year, your, office manual that says, listen, we have a zero tolerance policy for embezzlement. We do this to protect you, to protect the practice, and to protect the patients. Set up and configure your systems and establish new protocols. I have doctors all the time that'll say, I want to do this, but I'm scared about what the team will say. I'm more scared of the money you're going to lose if you don't do it. So what I would say to you is go back in and start with just the cash only policy and eliminate your petty cash fully. Take all your petty cash before the end of the new year, before the new year starts, and go put it back in the bank account and go to a cash only policy of exact change. The team will not have to make change anymore. The practice isn't handling money, or the middle of the day, someone's going, oh, I've got to run to the bank to get more petty cash, which many times takes 2 to 3 hours extra because, they stop and pick up their groceries and see a friend along the way. Just get rid of it. It's a nuance and it doesn't need to be there. And then training, educate your team members on new protocols. You can very simply share these new protocols and set up a lunch and learn to just say, guys, we want to make sure that we're handling money the right way, again, to protect you, to protect the practice, and to protect the patients. And then also monitoring, making sure that those adjustments are being posted and seen as frequently as possible is a critical component of this. Annual certification is great. Quarterly updates, and even new hire orientation. There are studies that show there is a much lower amount of embezzlement happening because during the new hire orientation, it's just simply said, hey, so we don't put up with this in our clinic. We hold a very a very low tolerance to anyone that does something that compromises our clinic. So we just want you to know that this is who we are. And it eliminates so many issues. Monitoring and auditing. You're going to see a poll pop up again for you on this one, but I want to challenge you with these frequencies of monitoring and auditing. Daily patient reconciliation. So if the payment's posted, but it's not associated with the patient, you should be looking at that. I would even argue from the patient reconciliation, once a month, someone needs to be pulling that credit balance report and ensuring that every credit balance was allocated to the service. Because many times I see in offices where they're playing Santa and the patient comes in and they go, oh my gosh, you have an extra $100. We can't wait for you, to use that $100 on your treatment. And it actually was just an unapplied payment from insurance. Someone needs to reconcile for that for you at least once a month. It's a very easy process. They look at the EOB, they look at the amount of money, and they allocate it toward the treatment. And then also monthly bank reconciliation with your bookkeeper, asking them to pull your production and collection per month and looking at that. I would even argue that where the majority of the embezzlement occurs is in the 2 months prior to the month that you're in. It's not a bad idea to ask your bookkeeper when they run that bank reconciliation to also run the adjustments that took place from 2 months ago that are happening today. You just go in and you run your adjustments and you sort it and you go, oh, that's weird. There were like 30 adjustments that happened for things from 2 months ago. I wonder what those are. If they're cash or a check that's other than insurance, you immediately can have a red flag in some of those, especially if they're waiting until someone's moved on. Also, please close out your books. Most patient management systems allow this. Curve does a great job of it, but you can set your books to close so that people aren't going in and adjusting things long term, and you can decide on what that looks like, but it's very important to set those closures up. Also, quarterly do a procedure analysis with your accountant. It's a great time to look at what your top performing codes were and what was missing. And then annually do a comprehensive audit where everything's looked at, everything's put in place. And again, just staying alert. If there is someone that seems incredibly protective, it's probably time to review things. So your leadership roles can look like active oversight, open communication, and model integrity, meaning that they are demonstrating ethical behavior. They're talking about it frequently, even celebrating it. I love when the adjustments are shared. When you implement a bonus structure, they are literally shared as like a win for everybody. That, listen, this month we had half the adjustments that we'd had last month because we're paying attention to things, and we actually are going to bonus as a team because of it. So the last poll I think that's going to pop up here is related to balancing trust and control, which means that the controls, if implemented and you go back, you say, okay, we're doing this now because I went to this conversation, I went to this, CE with Cassie and had this conversation on embezzlement, and I don't want this happening here with us. Embezzlement is a dirty word. Nobody wants to hear it and everybody takes offense to it. I would challenge you with the solution that you tell them you are creating protection for everyone. Say we're implementing the standardization of what every other practice is doing so that we can make sure you bonus, so that we can make sure that we're meeting our collection goals. And we're doing it for you, for protection for you, for the practice, and for the patients, right? And that changes the dialogue. Don't go back and say, we need to implement protocols for embezzlement. That's not how this works. You have to establish controls with the team to where they understand it's for their good and to protect them. And also, like I said, I do believe that if done correctly, people get really excited about that bonus potential because now they don't need a side hustle. They can just earn more within the clinic and make more. If there is someone that is deeply disgruntled with this, even after you propose it as a solution for them, the practice, and the patients, you probably don't want them in your practice anyway. And many times it can be a red flag that they've been an embezzler up to this point, and now they don't like that you're putting controls in place. So just be aware of it. Don't take any offense to it if they seem to not be happy with the new process, because it's a great time to restructure and add the right leadership controls. Acknowledge people, reward improvements, celebrate team success, and share financial wins. Too frequently, those financial wins are not shared in morning huddle. They're not shared collectively as a team. Make sure you do it, because the more they know you're watching the finances and you're talking about it with them, the more they will hold to those accountabilities. So your 30-day implementation checklist looks like assessing in the next 5 days, what is it you need to remove? Adjustments set up with accuracy, right? Identifying your high risk areas, which is cash, eliminating that, the drawer to take deposits in where you're actually creating change. You don't need it. No more petty cash. And then also document baseline metrics. What are the metrics that we want to see versus what we do see? And even very quickly in your assessment, you could pull your collections from 2 months ago of your total collections, give them to your accountant who has been operating only with QuickBooks in the bank, and say, hey, does this collections total match up with what you saw deposited? And if not, you immediately are going to have a game plan for where things need to go. And what's cool about that is if you print that summary, it actually will show you those numbers per grouping, right? Credit cards, cash, checks, all of that. Now, when you go and you look and reconcile that against the bank deposit, you immediately can see where the variance lies. So if your credit card payments are off against what was actually deposited into the bank, start there. And now you can do the deep dive. If the cash was drastically off inside of the PMS versus, the deposits, you can start there. Those are the ways that you kind of can evaluate those red flags and move forward. Then begin to draft and plan a new policy. Chat GPT and even Claude are very good at pulling additional resources for you of existing dental office manuals. Tell it what you want and it will build it for you. Put the new policies in your existing manual that say, listen, we take very seriously embezzlement and we do not tolerate it in our clinic, and review it with your new hire, every new hire, so that they know that is something that you look at, that you talk about, and that is a priority for your clinic. It stops a lot of things from moving forward because there's no question of whether or not you're looking at things. Revise your job descriptions in the new year. Make sure that people are handling things the way that they should. And schedule demos, schedule demonstrations of new technology, looking at things like Curve that could actually make things more successful for you. And also implementation, training of your teams, technology installation, and beginning to have dual verification of process. Set goals for yourself. These are some that I love to see, where we, set high level goals and that as a team we accomplish them. And then create annual review requirements. What are we going to do as a team to make sure we stay on track? Let your accountant even speak to the team on how good they did in terms of collections. Sometimes that can bolster morale more than anything if somebody else can share what they see or what's improved. And then create this case resolution approach of the trusted assistant example that I share with you here of making things a different approach. There were a significant amount of loss that happened over a 3-year period, and an embezzler was convicted and received an 18-month system, and they order restitution. Insurance actually covered the recovery of that. So the practice had, new comprehensive controls, but insurance covered the losses, and the practice is now thriving. So if you do see something, establish case resolution that you're going to go after solving this and fixing this. And again, making sure that it doesn't ever happen again. All it takes is that one little thought that you have of like, that seems off, or that number doesn't feel right. Trust but verify. If you feel that in your gut, it's likely a chance to go back and look at it. So really, there are questions that come forward of, can I trust anyone? What's the most important control? What if embezzlement happens? What then? Document evidence immediately. I always make sure that I share this. I'm not an HR certified representative, but don't go and tell someone on your team that you found it. Don't go and talk about that person. It can actually be very bad for you. Also, can I really trust anyone? Yes, you can trust your team, but again, verify, establish controls, and establish what their roles are in leadership. And then what's the most important control? I will tell you this over and over again. It's the doctor or ownership involvement in looking at those things. They need to know you're in the system. They need to know that you review the things that are there. If it feels very hands off, like it's, you know what, you take over, that is a problem in and of itself, because they begin to realize they can do things without anything being monitored. So technology implementation tips to close this up for you very quickly are: start small, begin with one system. I always say the first thing to start with is get rid of your petty cash. It's the easiest thing you can do, and it's the fastest way you can protect your cash. Involve your team. Get staff input for better adoption. I absolutely love this, because if you involve your team in the process, they will likely give you input as well on things that they would like to see. And then invest in training. Make sure everyone's trained and where they need to be. So your next steps are to assess your practice, prioritize your controls, schedule implementation, and then reach out for help. So, I really will recommend from the reach out for help piece that you look at Curve being a resource for you when it comes to setting up controls. If you're looking to switch to the cloud and you're looking to do those things, We only have a few minutes left here, and you're going to have a QR code at the very end of this so that you can get your CE credit. But I want to just very briefly tell you why I use Curve. This is important to me because I have several tools in my toolkit, like Pearl and Bola AI and Curve Dental. They're in my toolkit because they have actually worked as a fractional operator with the controls that I just mentioned with embezzlement. I can go in and set my parameters around admin controls. I can go in and make sure that everything is trusted in what it needs to be in terms of audit trails. I can set that the practice closes at a certain time and no one can access it but doctors at a certain point. It's just a safeguard measure in and of itself with what the practice management system can do. So the pain points where Curve comes in is the staff to workload ratio, the financials associated with insurance and your RCM, cash flow, just like I mentioned. They are an invoice-based billing solution. So what I absolutely love is when treatment completes, the bill goes out, and practice production. So I give this first slide to say this was my introduction into Curve Dental, was taking on a clinic. If you can see those numbers, it's a tad bit blurry, but I went from a clinic that their aging was completely out of whack because they just didn't have a good handle on it. You know, even their over 90 was at 12,000 and we dropped it to just under 4,000. Their past 30 days, which was highly significant for me. It was over almost 85,000. We dropped it to 37,949. This happened because Curve allows you to turn on auto adjudication. So batched billing and claims can all be paid and done electronically. Someone doesn't have to physically do that. It's done with AI. The insurance verification happens automatically. And also, I can send out statements or even resubmit claims in just rapid fire progression through Curve Dental. It is the best of the best when it comes to going after that money and making sure that I am improving the process in terms of the way cash flow occurs. The other thing is there's something called tag foundations where it actually allows you, not just like the explosion codes tied to your your treatment plan, it allows you to actually see the foundation that you can build for the patient that's getting ready to come into your practice. So by that I mean many times I'll go to a clinic and the clinic goes, "We only see comp exams and limited exams." And I'm like, "Yeah, but you're advertising a ton for these, this ortho program that you have now." "Well, yeah, I know, but they need a comp exam." And literally when the patient calls in, they say, "Oh, well, we schedule you for a comp exam first." Number one, the patient doesn't know what a comp exam means. And number two, if you're advertising an ortho consult, build a tag for the introductory visit as an ortho consult. You can put all of your CDT codes in there. You can choose the lanes of traffic where you want it to be, color code it, and make a very nice scheduling tool. It allows me to select as many of the codes that I want. And I have said this in other CEs, but what I love about this for me is that it creates my checklist right from the beginning of the visit scheduled, and I can build that foundation with excellence. And then I can sync it to the type of an intake form, a digital form that goes right to the patient, one that could be a new patient, one that could be a limited, and one that could be an ortho consult. All of those forms can be color coded the same and include the same types of information you want associated with the type of visit. It's the coolest, and I love that I can customize it this far. Then I can go in and I can actually create consents that match the type of a visit. I literally can come in and create a consent that is just for an ortho consult, that is all of the elements of the ortho consult: permission to scan, permission to take pictures, permission to take an x-ray, all in one combined grouped consent to eliminate paper and make it color coded and the same as the intake type. Then I can go a step further and build my note template to match the tag, which is phenomenal. and create shortcuts for those in the treatment plan, just like an explosion code in Dentrix or Dentrix Ascend. What I love about this is it's a step further because it's color coded with accuracy for the doctors, where all I have to do is select a tooth and choose those shortcuts for my treatment plans. And it doesn't take a seasoned RDA to know what I want because my treatment plans are pre-built. Then, again, absolutely love this. I can take those tag foundations or types and I can say, you know what? My marketing is being all used right now for ortho consults. So I'm going to create a online scheduling tool that is just for ortho consults. Nothing else is turned on. You don't have to turn on the waterworks of online scheduling. You can turn on just one type of a visit, and it's phenomenal. You can choose the lane of traffic, you can choose the provider, you can select the days that you want it, even the times, and drill down as specific as you want to create a very custom online scheduling tool. So it's all about achieving this operational excellence where you can build this improved method of intake. I would just say go back into your practice today and see how difficult it is for scheduling. Are things missing? If someone's not there that holds the keys to the kingdom, can the rest of the team do what they need to do? And if you haven't online scheduled yet, now's the time to be thinking how your practice management system could actually do this for you. And then align. So you've got a faster response time. Curve has helped me with practices where I lost an entire front desk and was able to be up and running in 2 days with an entirely new team. They have upgraded compliance because it's the consents can match everything that you need. They're front and center. There's no more second guessing or waiting for someone that holds the CDT code accuracy. It's built into Curve. The patient satisfaction goes through the roof. What I absolutely love about this is I can be chairside with a doc. The doc recommends treatment. We click the quick button that has all the codes the doctor wants. The patient gets a digital treatment plan to their phone. They sign it and it goes into the doc center. It doesn't get any easier than that. And the return on investment is it's built right from the beginning. If you are looking to scale and bring on an associate, your financials can stay in the old system and you can start fresh with the accuracy, fee schedules, the way that you're doing your adjustments, all of that, and build a system once and for all that's what you need, and it's based on the cloud. So the last piece I'll leave you with, so that you can go in and actually scan this code, and this code will give you your CE accreditation. You'll fill out a quick quiz, and it'll also let you schedule a discovery call if you want to do a demonstration on Curve and what it can do for you. If you notice, on the left side of the screen is the app that Curve offers. I always leave this to last, but it's one of my favorite features. Docs can actually log in and look at the x-rays and respond to patients and pull up the patient's full chart while they're even coaching and schooling a new associate, because it's all front and center from their mobile device. No more logging into the server, no more, not being able to see the schedule when you leave on vacation. It allows you access anywhere, and it's all HIPAA secured and compliant. So please schedule a discovery call. I highly recommend it. Curve is one of the biggest tools in my toolkit. And again, as I see embezzlement issues day in and day out, Curve becomes this framework for me of what I can go in and kind of build the perfect system so that the practice operates with excellence. And, changing your patient management system to the cloud is not an easy process, but somehow Curve is able to make that easy because their team is so dedicated to getting it right for you. So if you have questions, you can ask them at the end here. But I do have one question that came through that I'll go to now. Is there any way to close the books in Curve automatically? I'd like to have the ledger lock on a constant trailing window. I would recommend you reach out to your team that works with you with Curve. They can set up those parameters for you, but that would allow you to have more controls. And also I would review, is there anything happening right now with your user privileges where they have the ability to do things, like they have the ability to even unlock notations? It's really important you go in and you review those administrative privileges. And again, that's something that you can even do that. That can be something as simple as just meeting with your curve representative, and they can show you that as well. So I'm so grateful that you were able to join. The quiz link is also in the chat, but I'm so grateful for your thoughts. And you do not need to do the demo in order to get the CE. The CE is given freely. The demo is there if you would like to do it. So thank you for being a part of this tonight. I hope you'll go back and find the best embezzlement controls for you. And again, happy holidays to each of you here, and best wishes for a wonderful new year. Thank you so much.